Right now, without a single warning light, without a single error message, your SSD could be counting down its last few hundred writes. And your operating system won't say a word about it. No spinning sounds, no stuttering, no smoke. One morning your drive is there, your files are there, your life is there, and then it isn't. That's the thing about SSDs that nobody explains to you when you buy one. They don't die loudly, they vanish quietly, and they take everything with them. To understand why SSDs fail without warning, you need to understand what's actually happening inside that tiny chip. Because it's nothing like a hard drive dying, and that difference is exactly what makes it so dangerous. Traditional hard drives are mechanical. Spinning platters, magnetic heads, physical wear. You can sometimes hear clicking or grinding before total failure. Your OS can detect a mechanical drive degrading because the symptoms are measurable and gradual. SSDs are different. They're built from AND to flash memory. Billions of tiny transistors that trap electrons to store data. And the critical detail is this. Every single time you write data to those transistors, you degrade them slightly, not metaphorically, physically. The cell walls thin, the ability to hold a charge weakens. There's a hard limit on how many times each cell can be written before it becomes unreliable, and manufacturers measure this with a value called TBW, terabytes written. Think about that for a second. Your drive has a lifetime written in terabytes, sitting on a spec sheet you probably never read. Budget drives come with TBW ratings as low as 150 to 300 terabytes. Mid-range drives land at 300 to 600. High-end NVMe drives, built for heavy workloads, can go 1,000 to 200 terabytes or higher. The problem is that nothing in Windows, nothing in Mac OS, nothing in the default user interface of any mainstream operating system tells you how close you are to that limit in a meaningful, obvious way. No progress bar, no warning at 80%, no pop-up at 95%. And what happens when you cross that threshold isn't a graceful shutdown. It's data corruption, unreadable sectors, and in some cases, drives that become completely unresponsive between one session and the next. Here's what really bothers me about this. The manufacturers know exactly how many write cycles their drives are rated for, they publish the numbers, and then they design their products to give you almost no visible indication when you're approaching that cliff. Which stands for self-monitoring, analysis, and reporting technology. That data is there. It exists. It's being updated constantly. But most people never see it because accessing it requires third-party tools or command line knowledge that the average user simply doesn't have. The Solid State Technology Association has documented this gap between manufacturer health reporting and consumer accessibility for years. And in 2023, researchers at Carnegie Mellon published analysis showing that SSD failure rates follow a pattern that's difficult to predict from surface-level symptoms alone. The drives can operate near normally right up until they don't. Storage Review's independent testing confirmed that drives approaching TBW limits often pass basic read tests while quietly failing write reliability, meaning your files open fine until you try to save something new. If you're sitting on a laptop right now that's 2 or 3 years old, this applies to you. If you've got a desktop you built in 2021 or 2022, and you're someone who edits video, runs virtual machines, or just has Steam installed with 15 games, this applies to you. Think about what the data actually means in personal terms. Every browser session you've had, every Word document autosave, every Windows update, every game installed or uninstalled, all of it is being counted against your drive's TBW budget. Heavy users can burn through 100 terabytes in a year without realizing it. And here's the silent killer angle nobody talks about. Windows 11, specifically, has significantly increased background write activity compared to Windows 10 through telemetry, scheduled tasks, and the page file behavior on systems without enough RAM. That's not speculation. That's measurable with any disk activity monitor. But here's what really bothers me about the way this is set up. SSDs became mainstream because the industry sold them as superior to hard drives in every way. Faster, quieter, more durable. And on paper, those claims are true. But durable doesn't mean immortal, and the industry quietly shifted the responsibility for monitoring SSD health entirely onto the consumer, with no real mechanism to make that monitoring easy or automatic. It's like selling someone a car with no fuel gauge and then pointing to the owner's manual when it stalls. You are the admin of your own machine. But they've made it easy to forget that, and inconvenient to act on it. The business logic is uncomfortable to look at. If your drive fails 3 years after purchase, that's not technically a warranty issue for most manufacturers. The warranty covers defects, not wear. And a new drive sale is a new drive sale. There's no financial incentive to put a prominent health warning in the user interface. T data into Windows in a way that actually reaches you before it's too late. Microsoft could add SSD health monitoring to Windows Security or the Task Manager Health panel. Both already exist. The data is already being collected. The decision not to surface it prominently is a decision. T, data, is the single most overlooked piece of consumer hardware diagnostics in modern computing. And when I started looking at the specific attributes being silently logged, word leveling count, total bytes written, reallocated sectors, the picture became clear. The information exists. You're just not supposed to need it, according to the design philosophy of every major OS vendor. You're supposed to trust that everything is fine until the blue screen tells you otherwise. When I realized that my own main workstation drive was at 73% lifetime health, on a drive I'd bought less than 2 years ago, without a single visible symptom, that changed how I approach hardware. Let me show you exactly what you can do about this. Because the fix is free, it takes less than 15 minutes and it will give you information about your drives that you probably never knew existed. The first thing to install is Crystal Disk Info, which is a free open source application with no ads, no bundled software if you download from the developer's official repository, and a dead simple interface. T data from every drive connected to your system and gives you an overall health status, good, caution, or bad, along with the specific attributes driving that assessment. The key numbers to pay attention to are the wear leveling count, which tells you how evenly your drive has distributed writes across its cells, the total host writes, which converts to terabytes, and lets you calculate your remaining TBW budget and any reallocated sectors count above 0, which means your drive has already found bad cells and moved data away from them. $0 takes about 3 minutes to install, and you'll know more about your drive's real condition in the first 60 seconds of using it than you've ever known before. Stay with me here, because this next part is crucial. The second layer is a monitoring approach, not just a one-time check. Knowing your drive health today is useful. Knowing how it's changing over time is what actually saves your data. T, attribute changes to a warning state. Enable that. It runs light in the background and doesn't affect system performance. If you're on Windows 11, you can also enable the built-in storage health reporting under Settings, then System, then Storage, then Advanced Storage Settings. This gives you a basic overview, though it's far less detailed than Crystal Disk Info. Think of the Windows tool as the map and Crystal Disk Info as the terrain. The third step is calculating where you actually stand. Take the total host writes value from Crystal Disk Info. It'll be in gigabytes or terabytes, and divide it by your drive's rated TBW, which you can look up using your drive's model number from the same Crystal Disk Info window. That percentage is your consumed lifetime. If you're over 70% and the drive is under 3 years old, you should be planning a replacement now, not when it fails. If you're under 40%, you have time, but you should still be monitoring. The fourth step is backup, which sounds obvious, but isn't practiced the way it should be. T data can tell you a drive is degrading, but it cannot guarantee you a warning before failure. Some SSDs cross from caution to unresponsive in a matter of days. The 3-2-1 rule is still the gold standard. 3 copies of your data, 2 different storage media types, one stored off-site or in the cloud. If you're not doing this, the health monitoring tools I just described are a diagnostic without a cure. Tools, like Macrium Reflect Free, let you image your entire drive, operating system and all, to an external drive. It takes about an hour to set up, and it means that even if your SSD fails overnight, you're back up and running from an image, not starting from scratch. One more layer worth adding, check your drive's firmware. Manufacturers occasionally release firmware updates that improve wear management algorithms or fix known issues with specific drive models. You can do this through manufacturer-specific tools, Samsung Magician for Samsung drives, WD Dashboard for Western Digital, Crucial Storage Executive for Crucial, and it's worth checking once a year. Some firmware updates have meaningfully extended drive longevity by improving how the controller manages write amplification. Now, a quick disclaimer before we go further. If you're in an enterprise environment or running a server setup, the tools and thresholds I'm describing are starting points, not the full picture. Enterprise drives have different TBW ratings and health metrics, and you should be using your organization's fleet management software rather than consumer tools. Also, none of this replaces professional data recovery services if your drive has already moved from caution to failure. At that point, stop writing to it, stop trying to fix it yourself, and get it to a professional before you make the situation worse. Here's the bigger truth underneath all of this. We've been conditioned to trust hardware the same way we trust a light switch. Flip it, it works, don't think about it. And for a long time with hard drives, that trust had an early warning system. You heard things, you felt the machine slow down, the failure had a physical presence. SSDs removed all of that. They made our computers faster and quieter, which is genuinely great, and then left us completely in the dark about what's happening underneath. That's not a technological inevitability, that's a design choice. And understanding that shifts something. It moves the responsibility back to you in a way that's actually manageable. You started this video not knowing what TBW meant or where to find your drive's health data. T monitoring is where the data lives, which tools surface it for free, how to calculate where your drive stands, and what to do with that information before it becomes an emergency. That's not paranoia. That's just being the actual administrator of your own machine, which you are, regardless of how invisible they've made the tools. You're not paranoid for wanting to know how much life your drive has left. You're not being unreasonable for thinking this information should be front and center in the operating system, rather than buried in third-party utilities. Millions of people lose data every year to drive failures they never saw coming. That doesn't have to include you. Do the check today. Not this weekend, not next time you have an hour. Open your browser right now, download Crystal Disk Info, and spend 3 minutes finding out where your drives actually stand. If you're in good shape, you'll know it. If you're not, you'll be glad you checked before the alternative. If this is the kind of content you want, honest, technical, built around things that actually affect your data and your hardware, hit subscribe. I cover this stuff the moment it matters, and I don't wait for it to become a viral panic to report it. Drop a comment and tell me what your wear percentage came out to. I'm genuinely curious, and I rate everyone.